So hello, and welcome to the Empowering Women podcast. It is already February, and it is our second episode of season 7. So welcome to the month of love and joy. And speaking of joy, today's guest is going to bring you so much joy. I had the honor to share the stage with her at the 2024 Empowering Women in Industry Conference in October. Bose Akadiri is the founder and motivational speaker of Goal and Grind, where she empowers dreams, elevates teams, and transforms organization. And I just love their core tenets: joy, goals, and purpose. Those are absolutely fabulous. And we're going to dig into more of that today. So welcome, Bose, to the podcast. It is so good to see you.
Thank you, Shannon. It is so good to see you again. I just love that the first time we met, it got to be in person.
Yeah.
And we just shared such a special time. So I love to be able to reconnect with you here. And thank you for inviting me. I just really appreciate the way that you, Charlie, Becca, just everyone from the Empowering Women family, how you all have just really brought me into the fold.
Yep. We grab onto a lot of people and say, come join us.
I'm here and I'm here to stay.
Yeah. So as many of my longtime listeners know, I love to start by hearing more about you. And I know our listeners want to hear more about you. So tell us more about your story. I'm excited to learn more about your personal journey.
Yeah. So my journey is not a straight line, right? And that's why I always tell people it's never too late to follow your dreams, right? So my story is that I grew up in Oklahoma. I live in Chicago now, but I grew up in Oklahoma and I had this big city dream, right? I said, I want to be in the big city. And there were so many components of it, right? But after college, I started working, I'm living in Oklahoma, and I had a really good life there, right? Great friends, great family there, and a great job. But it wasn't my life that I envisioned for myself. And so I really thought about things, prayed about things, and put together what I call a life strategy. And that's really what I help people do at Goal and Grind. And that was set on the foundation of joy. So that understanding that joy is the foundation of goal setting and not just the reward has impacted me in all areas of my life. What I like to think of the 4 key areas: personal, professional, health, and financial. And what I mean by that is 10 years ago, I moved to Chicago and I had no network and no job. And now I have
That's just crazy. Say that one more time. You moved there with what?
No network, no job, right?
All right, keep going.
Well, which it is wild. I had a really good friend from church. Her daughter lived here, but we work in very different sectors. And she was really nice to help me with finding a place. But I was shifting careers and I was also shifting cities. And from the outside, people thought, oh, that's so fly by the seat of your pants. But it really wasn't, because I was really focused on my joy and what would continue to bring me that. And at the same time, going after it in a very strategic way. So I had my goals. They were set up in those 10 key areas. I had long-term and short-term goals, and I was just going after it. So now that I've been here, I have done what was my dream job at 3 Fortune 500 companies, which seems really strange to say sometimes. People say, oh, how did that happen? And so that's my story. And that's how I got here. And I attribute a lot of that tenacity and really being able to go after it to my mother. She's my best friend. She's my biggest cheerleader, my biggest advocate. And she has never asked me why. Okay. That's a very important thing. She has always said, how? Right? When I've had these big dreams, right? Like I went to the University of Oklahoma and I studied abroad twice. I have a mother who comes from, small town, East Texas, humble beginnings, had never been out of the country. And here her child's coming to her saying, I want to go live in another country for half the year. She said, okay, how? She never said why. I have never asked her, but I can only imagine how scary that was for her. But I appreciate that she always inspired me to continue to dream big. She always told me I could do whatever I wanted. And I literally am. I'm doing what brings me joy. And so when I started, really thinking about how that happened, it was just amazing. And that's how I created what I call the vision and goals roadmap, which later in the show, little preview later in the show, I'll give everybody access to get one of those roadmaps and
Yeah.
make it for themselves.
Yep. I love that. I'm curious, why Chicago? Like what drew you to Chicago?
Yeah. So it's about joy, right? I don't like driving. And so,
I'm with you there. I don't really like driving either.
so the last 10 years, not only do I not drive, but I don't have a car payment. I don't have car insurance. I don't know how much gasoline costs. Like, none of that has a bearing on my life. So I really wanted to be in a city that had good public transportation and walkability.
Mm.
So that was one thing. I love international travel. Shout out to my roots in Oklahoma, but there's no international airport. And so I wanted to be
Mm.
somewhere with an international airport so I could do the things that really mattered to me and do them in a more efficient way.
Right.
Also, there's a little bit more, not a little bit more, why would I say that? There's a lot more diversity in industry, diversity in people. And that gave me a chance to really get to know so many different things, right? And so, yeah, so I knew I wanted more arts, I wanted more culture, I wanted public transportation, I wanted that international airport, and I got it.
You got it. A really quick funny story. It's so off topic, but I was flying through O'Hare. Actually, it was an Empowering Women conference, and I
Mhm.
got stuck in O'Hare for like 36 hours.
Oh, goodness. Well, next time, call your friend.
Fortunately, there's a lot to do in the O'Hare airport. I didn't get to see much of outside the airport because I kept getting bumped because there were storms and issues in the area. But so
No.
I get it though. It's a huge airport, lots of flights in, lots of flights out. You can probably pick where almost anywhere in the world you want to go and get there pretty quickly.
Anywhere, and direct flights, 'cause,
Oh yeah.
I'm carry-on only global entry woman. Just give me in, out, very quick.
Yep.
But yeah, if that ever happens again, now you've got a friend to call.
I do. I live about an hour from the Charlotte, North Carolina airport, so that's not as big as Chicago, but definitely is a huge blessing. You don't have to like take three steps to get to a place most of the time.
Yes, it's very different, and I started to see that because obviously, like, I have a lot of really close friends still in Oklahoma, and we'll do trips together, and I'm like, "Oh, wow." Like, it costs a lot more, it also takes longer, and, so we still travel together, but it's just easier for me.
That's funny. Well, as I discussed during the intro, we had the absolute privilege of sharing a stage together. We had not met before that, which I love how life does that for us. I'm curious what drew you to the Empowering Women Conference because you aren't originally part of our steering committee or been part of our organization up until now.
Yeah, so it was a huge blessing. I believe God works in mysterious ways, and you end up where you're supposed to be with who you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be with them, okay? So Jill Miller was a client
Mhm.
of mine, and she's on the steering committee. And literally for like 2 years, she had been like, "You have got to speak at this conference." And I was like, "Well, I don't know." Like, I was like, "I'm busy and, I don't know if I'm the right person." And she was like, "You are, you are, you are. Just submit." And so, it's funny because it would have been really great if I had submitted the previous year when it was in Chicago, but that's okay. I'll submit this year when it's back. So I submit, I'm on pins and needles. Like, I hope they pick me. I spent all this time preparing the materials and submitting them. And then I was selected. And I have to tell you, Jill had done such a great job of sharing about empowering women and what it meant to her and the community, but really being there was so just like moving. You know,
Mm.
I have cried looking back and thinking about it because it just touched my heart and my spirit so much. And it's like to see so many different women from different walks of life, coming together. It's like Michelle Obama says, we are more alike than we realize. And it
Mhm.
was just so nice, because I worked very corporate jobs. And so I'm not necessarily like your typical woman in industry. And I thought, you know, am I the right person to speak? And it was just so beautiful to meet everybody, to understand what people's like day-to-day working was. I love the fashion show. And it's so funny. I'm trying to get my best friend from Oklahoma to come to the event this year, to it in Chicago, because I told her, I was like, you're a woman in industry. And so, and she was, and she's been looking at it, and she really is excited about it. And so to me, it was just such a special event, and I felt so honored to be on that stage, and I felt so like included and welcome. And I might have brought a speech that was about joy, but I received joy tenfold from you and everybody there.
Yeah, I think it is really a community of belonging. I love that you use that word because Charlie has created a very unique culture of belonging. You probably, like me, have been to a lot of different conferences. I've been to a lot of different conferences focused on women based on my travels. And sometimes you walk in and you don't feel that way. You sort of feel like an outsider, especially if you came by yourself, which I've done before. And it's not like that. But it's like, oh, hi, it's your first time here. They just start talking to you.
Yes. And I have to say, like, I remember the first time we spoke because, there were so many people and I was trying to, gather myself and remember everything. And you were like, yeah, you're bossy. Like, you're speaking on this. And I was like, oh, they have really been paying attention, at the Rosie the Riveter's dinner. That was so much fun. And it was just a very important. I think it is a conference that is really needed. And I love that it has grown the way it has. And I can't wait to keep seeing it grow and glow because I
Yep.
know that it's needed. I think about my best friend when I was showing her the pictures and she looked at the fashion show and she said, "Where did those boots come from?" She said, "You know how hard it is for me to find fashionable boots that are still going to work and protect me whenever I'm in factories and this and that." And I thought, I'm learning things. I'm learning things by being involved with women in industry. I'm thinking about other people that, I can bring into the fold because it's very important. It's very needed. And
Mm.
it gives you that warm feeling. I'm
Yeah,
like,
it does. I'm laughing. This is not going to surprise you. I have the cherry bomb Juno Jones boots, like bright red Juno Jones boots.
see,
And
yes.
every time I wear them to the factory, I get stopped at least once. You're like, where did you get your shoes? Oh goodness. Well, let's talk a little bit about Goal and Grind. If I'm right, and please correct me if I'm not, you founded that in early 2019. I'm just
Yeah.
curious, what inspired you to found this organization?
Oh my gosh. I first off, thank you for doing your research. I'm like, I feel so, I don't know, you make me feel special. But what inspired me was first there was my journey, but then people started asking how I did it. And,
Mm.
I thought I didn't do anything special. I focused on my joy and I went from there with my goals. And that's how I stepped into my purpose. But I realized not everybody had what I had, which was that mom that was very invested in my joy, that mom that was very invested in how. She was always pushing me. How are you going to do it? How are you going to do what you want? And so I broke it down into an actual method. And then I
Mm.
had someone ask me, like, well, you're doing this with your friends. Because the very first thing I had was the Vision and Goals Party. And that's a workshop that I do publicly once a year, but then companies actually hire me to bring it in. So I have a few companies that next month they're having me come in and do it with their employees, and we do a little tailorization. But that's really what started it was the Vision and Goals method. And the big thing was that I'm doing it with my friends. And then their friends started saying, "Can you come and do a private one at our house?" And I say, "Okay, okay." And then companies started asking me to come in and do it there. And I thought, this is important. It's important to talk about joy. It's important to talk about goals. It's important to talk about purpose. It's important to really see yourself in those four key areas of life. And so, what I realized is that the vision and goals method, when you're thinking about personal, professional, health, and financial, it really helps people to be strategic with their life, productive in their
Mm.
career, consistent with their health, and intentional about their finances. So it helps you bring everything together. And when you do that, you show up tenfold in all those areas because they're all moving together in a nice synergy. So it's really special to me because I believe that we deserve joy, and I believe that that joy is not limited to one area. It's
I'm
all of
curious what your friends thought with your first I'll call it party, because it might have just been a girls' night and you broke out. Somebody asked you the question, and you kind of broke out the thought process.
it. Yeah. Well, I have the workbooks. I guess I don't have one sitting right here. I should have. But like I have friends that have always, like even when I lived in Oklahoma, they knew I had this process. And so they would try to get with me once or twice a year to hash out theirs. So I just brought everyone together because I said, I can no longer have a meeting with you, a meeting with you, a meeting with you. Let's do this together. And after all, goal crushing is a team sport. So we might as well do it together, right?
Right.
So I had moved apartments the first time, and I said, this is my housewarming, but it's also a vision and goals party. And of course, everybody said, oh, okay, we'll bring magazines. I said, we don't need magazines. Why? Because we're not trying to place external expectations onto our lives, right? We're not trying to keep the Joneses. We're trying to focus on inner joy. And we're also going to do beyond the board because we're getting into action, right? So that's the thing about my workshops. This is for people that are ready to make a positive change in their life. It is not an inactive thing. So they were like, oh, okay. So people knew that they didn't know what was happening. So like Jill, for example, it's so funny. Whenever I do the annual event, I do testimonies. And the first year that Jill came, in the testimony, she says, I was really skeptical about this, but it ended up being really great. And I just crack up laughing every time I watch it because I'm like, she really did not think this was going to be a good.
I could see that. So I had the opportunity to share the stage with Jill the year before, actually. And she is a straight shooter, definitely. I mean, she's on top of her game, and she's direct, she's going, she's moving. I can see where she might be skeptical.
Right. So so when people started coming, they ended up loving it, and it really gave them a roadmap, right? And so those 5 steps are really outlined in that roadmap, which is why at the end of this, I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to get the roadmap and understand. But it really starts with really getting deep and intentional about what brings you joy, and then setting the goals from there.
I think it's really interesting you talk about your mom. So, in the prior episode, we had Stephanie had to check if I got that right on the podcast, and she focuses on younger girls. But in many cases, those younger girls are escaping maybe a lower socioeconomic level, generational poverty, and they don't have the person that asked why or how, pardon me, instead of why. Actually, they may even sometimes have the exact converse, meaning that they may be discouraged because those parents or guardians or whoever they may be are scared, just like your mom was probably scared. They just have a very different reaction that your mom has. So I love that you're doing that, because you're kind of taking a little bit of your mom with you, right? When you give that party. Yeah.
She is my everything. I believe that God blessed her with that ability. And then now I can take that and bless more people. And like, I truly, truly believe that because, we come from very humble beginnings. There's no reason why my mom should just have this random spurt of like, you can do anything. That is just literally who she was born to be. And sorry, I get a little emotional because it's just so special. And you're absolutely right. Like, people are scared, but also people don't know. And so that's why I also don't fault anyone who says why, because I think that's very natural. I think it was very unique that my mom was always saying how. That
Right.
built in me not only the understanding that I could have joy, but also the understanding that I had to work hard for it. Joy is something that we deserve, but also it can be a choice. It can be something that we're working in every day. I'll be the first to say, there have been times where I didn't know where I was going to find my joy. And I thought, how am I going to be a motivational speaker that talks about joy if I'm feeling so down? The two can exist at the same time. You just have to find your way.
Yep. And you have found and are finding your way, because I'm sure your way is taking you in so many different places.
Yes, that's why I said my career is not linear. It's gone.
No. No, yeah, and you have multiple careers, but we won't cover that today. Um, what I love, speaking of taking you different ways, is that your work impacts both individuals and companies, as I understand it, especially through your corporate workshops and training programs. So, do you mind sharing with our listeners more about a few key topics that you cover and how organizations can benefit from your workshops?
Yeah, definitely. So, Shannon, here's the thing. I'm building the business case for joy, okay? Because like I've been looking into all this research and it's fascinating, okay? So like BCG recently did a making work survey and they found that two of the biggest blockers that they have when people don't have joy and people they're not doing retention. They're not staying.
Mm,
They're not feeling motivated, they're not feeling supported. And so through that, they realize that if they're empowering employees, really pouring into them with development, that like employees who enjoy their work are 49% less likely to be looking for outside employment.
mm,
49%. That's what BCG said in this survey that they did and in this research that they did. So I've really been taking time to look outside of my own experiences and start to understand the research behind why joy is important, why it's important for people to feel included and motivated and supported at work. And so when I design my workshops, and I'm continuously improving them, right? Um, I design them in a way that they're interactive and they have
mm.
that team aspect, right? And so you got a little preview when I was on stage, but I can't do as much in 30 minutes as I can do in an hour and a half or 2 hours. But each step of the way has an aspect where people actually interact with each other. And I make sure that the workshops are not only dynamic and inspiring, but are action oriented. Because, yeah, we can be inspired all day long, but I want to give you a proven method that works. So I've got 3 different workshops that I do that really bolster that. The first one, of course, is the vision and goals. And that one's really for all audiences because at any age, you can take a step back and really think through your joy, goals, and purpose. But
Mm.
the one that has really taken off, and I was surprised by this, but I love it, it's called Elevator Pitch and Beyond. And I've had a
Hmm.
lot of folks, right? I've had a lot of folks want me to do that for their intern class, for their rotational analyst, if they have an early career group. And the reason is because people talk about elevator pitches, but no one's really talking about it, right? They're not saying, this is how you do it, this is how you put it together. What they're also not saying is, this is where you use it and when you use it. So my workshop on elevator pitches, it does start with joy, which is a little non-traditional, but we got to get that joy in there. But then it takes people through a method to build their elevator pitch in a way that honors their income generating skills. Like what are they actually pouring into the company, as well as their joy factors. And then it takes them to a point of, okay, you got this great elevator pitch. Now what? Who are you sharing it with? Where are you sharing it? When are you sharing it? And helping them identify the gaps in their network so that they can fill it. An elevator pitch, it can be used in your LinkedIn profile. It can be
Mhm.
used, if you have a meeting with a potential mentor, a coffee chat, that can be your introduction. That can be your bio. It can be so many things. And I think it's very important, just like you were talking about, there's a lot of young folks out here who we go to college, do all these things, but you're not taught the practical side of really catapulting your career and making your career one that you enjoy. I like the work that I do, right? And I've chosen to do it. And that is a privilege and an honor, right? But I understand there's a lot of us out there that have been going to a job for a long time and we're just doing it, right?
Yep.
We're just there. And so that's why I say, like, my job in Oklahoma was great. A lot of people would have wanted that job, but it wasn't my job. So I needed to go get what was mine, right? So
Yep.
that's why I love my corporate workshops because
Yeah, I don't want to get you too far off track here, so
oh,
we'll get
sorry.
to the third
Yeah,
one, I promise.
sorry.
But in my day job, I have a team that some of them are just right out of college, a couple of years out of college, and my brain was going at 90 miles a minute about how I would love to see them embrace that, right? But it's not their fault. Me, company, community haven't taught them what is an elevator pitch. Why does it matter? What should be in it? When should you use it? Right. And I'm like, oh gosh, she's totally hit on that one. Now that you explained it, I'm not surprised at all. Because I
Yeah.
think that many of us, especially if you're younger in your career, lack that skill, but it could go all the way across the spectrum.
Yeah. No, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Call me. I can come do
Yeah,
it.
no.
I'm like, call me, friend. But yeah, so that's really what it is. And the third one is called Purpose Driven Leader. And it's really
Mm.
about moving beyond like, okay, we've got our individual goals. How are we tying that as leaders to the overarching company goals, to our team goals, and really making sure everybody fits in there in a meaningful way, right? Because again, we want to have those good retention rates. And with good retention rates, that means we have employees that are plugged in, that are joyful, that are excited about the work. And
Yeah,
so
we talk about that in younger generations, but I'm a Gen Xer. I'm on the younger end of the Gen Xer, and I think it applies to me just as much as it does, a Gen Z person, for example. So I think purpose-driven leader goes all the way across the spectrum too. You're probably starting to get traction there on that one, I would imagine.
it is, that one's picking up more traction. But yeah, it's just been interesting because like I said, I'm a woman of faith, and I believe that everything happens for a reason. And I'm like, oh, okay, these things that I thought were just inherent and that I knew how to do, now I'm starting to realize they weren't. Like, not everybody had this. So let me just share it. I don't like to gatekeep. Like, let me just share what I have, and there's room for everybody at the table. We can all grow and glow
Have
together.
you had a win or a surprise in any of your workshops? I'd focus maybe on the last two since it sounds like they're both taking off, and I'm gonna call it broadening your offering.
I love it. Yes, that's really what happened. I got taken down a new road. So I would say one of the biggest successes is I got this inquiry on my website, and I was like, well, who is this? I don't know. But I was excited. And it was somebody had seen me speak somewhere, and they were an intern. And they
Hmm.
went to the person in their company at HR that led the intern program. And they said, I want her to come in for all the interns, and do something for us. And that to me was so powerful and so special because that means what I said in that like 30-minute speech, she thought was so valuable. She wanted herself and all of the rest of her fellow interns in that class that summer to experience it. And so that was really, really, really powerful for me to understand. And yeah, they were amazing. I went in and I did that with that client. And to my surprise, they also had a rotational analyst program. And since the interns enjoyed it, then I went to another department and did it with a rotational analyst. And the big thing is feedback. I'm a believer that I am constantly growing. And so with each client, I always do a survey and I do an after action review. And in the after action review, I share the survey results and I'm very candid about it. And in that, they had some feedback and I incorporated it. So when I did it with the analysts, I was like, they're actually getting a better workshop because they're getting the evolution, right? And
Yep.
so it was very special because it was like they were very intentional about we want Bossy, we want her method. I said, okay, I'm coming. And then they were very direct and straightforward and honest with me with feedback. I incorporated it and we did another workshop for another audience there.
That's fantastic. Well, I hope that elevator pitch one continues to grow. I think we all could use some help in that regard. So, for those of you listening, if you're interested, we'll have links to her website in the show notes. Please reach out to her. I'm sure she would be happy to help you or your company. Um, I know we're early in the year, we're a little past January, but I'm curious what your intention word for the year is or phrase.
Okay, so I have to be honest. I don't always choose one of these, but what is coming to me right now is action.
Mm,
I've done a lot of planning, and sometimes you can get stuck in the plans.
mm.
So I'm trying to make sure that this year is all about action. and making sure that I am executing the things that I'm supposed to be executing so that I can really build the business case for joy and bring more joy, goals, and purpose to the world. Keeping it simple. Keeping it simple. And that's, like you said, the evolution of the business. That's part of why, because I realized I need to get into action better. And that's okay. I got to do it. And with that, with the business, I've had different things of, looking through like doing one-on-one coaching and all these things. And so I've really narrowed the focus and evolved, and the action is really calling me towards doing more of the speaking and the corporate and
Yep.
workshops. But on the flip side, I feel very passionately about making sure that everyone has access to things. So later this month, I'm actually going to launch a platform that gives all my courses away for free.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So because I don't have the bandwidth to do as much individual one-on-one, but I want the resources to be out there because I've done a lot of interviewing. I've done on both sides of interviewing, right? I've done a lot of
Right.
being the person being interviewed, and I've been on the other side making the selections. And I have a lot of methods that will really help people. I've done a lot of negotiating. There's a lot of women listening to this podcast, and I know sometimes we don't like to talk about money and negotiating. I love to talk about money and negotiating. So one of those courses is on that. And I really want to empower people to go out and live their dream life. So I'm excited to be flipping the switch and just having that all be for free to the public. And I believe that that's the right action.
You and Karen Laus need to meet if you haven't already. She's all about negotiating. She was at the conference too.
I remember her. I liked her. I liked getting to meet her. I remember her. But yeah, so this year is all about action, making sure, I'm following the steps and being able to reach as many people as possible and bring that joy.
Bringing joy to the world, literally, but not the song. Well, speaking of joy, when we met in New Orleans, you've just such a magnetic personality. So most of the folks are probably listening to this. They're not watching us on video, but you have such a magnetic personality that's just pure joy. I don't know how to describe it, and it really pulls people in. Can you tell our listeners more about how you find your joy and how does that impact your daily life?
I do. So Shannon, the big thing is I have to pour into myself, right? And so I used to go really, really, really focused on all the professional. And I had to learn, no, Bossy, you are a woman who deserves fun in her personal life too. So I really focus on making sure I'm looking at those 4 key areas and how I do it. And you might have seen this, you might not, but I do these posts every Friday called Finish Line Friday. And
I have
that
seen them.
Oh, you've seen them. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I truly believe like every Friday I take like 15 minutes and I write out what have I accomplished. It might be work related, it might be personally related, it might be financial. Like, last year I was really happy. I got into a new financial like tracking system to do my budgeting because the one that I was in closed down and gave me, woo, so much heart palpitations over that. I was like, I had been in Mint for like 15 years.
Oh,
So
goodness.
having to find something after Mint closed. So it's like focusing on wins on a regular basis to me, it brings me joy because I think it's so easy to be like, I haven't gotten this done. I haven't gotten this done. Oh my gosh, my to-do list keeps growing, right? And then we feel like we haven't done anything. But I like to think of it as becoming my own cheerleader. And so every Finish Line Friday, now I'm not just doing that for myself, I'm also talking about it publicly of like, what have you done? It doesn't matter how small it is. Some weeks it might be, you know what, I have really fallen off my health track and I haven't worked out in 3 weeks. And we all know, well, for me, working out really helps me like refresh, renew, it helps my mental. And so if I've fallen off and then I go to yoga one day, I'm like, yes. Yeah. My Finish Line Friday is going to be like, you got 40 minutes of a workout in, like to continuously like live in that rooted in joy. you have to recognize yourself. And so I do have what I call an accomplishments journal. And so I journal each week. And if I feel stuck, there's prompts in that journal, things like, what do I feel proud about? Right? Because again, it's about the inward. Like, what do you feel proud about? What have people complimented you for? After empowering women in industry, I felt so overwhelmed with joy because Charlie jumped on that stage and she hugged me. Like
Yeah,
she,
you got a Charlie hug.
yes, she really hugged me. And, I felt pressure because I thought, Jill, my client, is here. I got to make sure she looks good. Like, I don't want to bore these women. I want to make sure they're happy and energized. And as soon as Charlie jumped up there and gave me that hug, I was like, oh, you did it, bossy. Like you
You
did
did do
it.
it.
Thank you. So that's how I keep the joy going is I set aside time every week. Finish line Friday.
If you haven't looked at her posts on LinkedIn, you need to do it. You may do it on other platforms. LinkedIn's where I've seen it. So Finish Line Friday, it's so true. Celebrate your wins. Celebrate what made you feel joyful through the week. And some of that may surprise you, right? You found something new that was joyful. Who knows?
Exactly. You never know what's going to come up as long as you make space for it.
I think that's so important. As long as you make space for it. I love that. Well, speaking of making space for stuff, I know that you love to give back to your community. That's what I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong. But you currently sit on the board of Ladies of Virtue. Is that right?
Yes, I
It's
love them.
it's a nonprofit dedicated to mentorship and leadership training for girls ages 19 to 18 in the Chicago area. So, do you mind telling us more about the organization and how it's impacted you?
Yeah. So, and I love that you said how it's impacted me because I think oftentimes when people think about volunteering, they think about how you're impacting others. But I love how you said how it's, excuse me, losing my voice, how it's impacted me because it has had a positive impact for me. So, the big thing is, I believe that goal crushing is a team sport. And when I think about that and who I am and everyone who has supported my journey, it was very important for me to also turn around and give back the
Mm,
same way that others have to me, whether it's formal mentoring or informal mentoring. And Ladies of Virtue just really touched my heart because with the girls, they're getting everything from like life skills, if that makes sense,
mm-hmm.
to like formal educational components and mentorship and community building. And they're giving back. They're learning about different companies, like they're going on college visits.
Mm,
They're doing all the things. And I started out on the junior board, which is called the Love Council. Ladies of Virtue, LOV. So the Love
mm,
Council. And on the junior board, what we were doing, and they still do, I just moved up to the larger board, is we would raise money in order to give these young ladies access and provide them things when they go to college. So a lot of people
mm.
don't think about, you go to college. When I went to college, my mom was like, here's, a set of towels for the dorms. Here's a computer.
Yep.
Here's all these things. Not everybody gets that. And as women,
Mm.
there's one critical thing we need. We need feminine hygiene products. Those just keep getting more and more expensive, okay?
Yeah. They're right up there with baby diapers, even though they're similar but different uses. Yeah.
Right. And so on the junior board, we give those things to the young ladies when they go to college. So to
Mm,
me, this organization was very different because it went beyond the formal mentorship and the formal, like, okay, we're doing a college visit or, we're doing this visit to a company. But it also said, we're going to level the playing field and make sure you have
mm.
everything you need so you don't have to think about it. Right? Because can you imagine being in college and trying to figure out how you're going to get your feminine hygiene products?
I cannot. So it's really about equity versus equality, right? It's about making sure that they have the stuff that maybe the person next to them they don't have to think about.
Right. And it's like, I honestly hadn't thought about things like that because I didn't have to. Right.
You're
So,
privileged, just like me. Yep.
right, right. And so it is a great honor and it impacts my life because I have a greater understanding of other people who I haven't walked in their shoes. And I really admire them. And the young ladies are so joyful. I love them, okay? Like, every year when I get to see them at the annual, we have a cocktail reception, so not a full-blown gala. We have a cocktail reception, and they're there, and they wear so the ladies' virtue colors are pink and blue, and they wear these blue blazers, and, they share about the program, and we raise money, right? We raise money. And it's just a beautiful thing. So to me, I love seeing there's the formal part, but then there's also the informal part that I think can sometimes be missing in these programs. And that's why I'm like, I like to give my money to Ladies of Virtue. And I give part of Goal and Grind's money to it too. So
yeah, and I'm probably sure it's nice to see this. I don't call them success stories, but how these girls and women are moving through their lives and how they're creating impact and joy in their own lives.
they are. They're becoming doctors and lawyers and scientists and all of these things. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. They're superseding.
You're like, you go, girls.
Right. I'm like, whoop, whoop.
Oh, I love it. Well, I have one final question. It's my favorite question to ask. What is one piece of advice or a quote that you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Okay. I mean, we all know I always say joy is the foundation of goal setting, not just the reward. But for this final piece of advice, I want to talk about how to put that into action. And it's what I call the 3 C's. So create strategic goals, right? Because you've got to be clear not only with yourself, but with others. No one can help you if they don't understand what you need help with. So you have got to create strategic goals. The next C, cheer for others' success. Like, if you really are going to be doing something, you need to be cheering for others. Like, the world was not made for us to be so like individualistic and single, right? You've got to cheer for others. And then the third is call on your support system. So just like you're cheering for them, you need to be calling on your support system. People don't expect for people to make assumptions. And so those kind of go in order. Like, they can go out of order, but if you think about it, if you haven't created clear strategic goals, how can you call on your support system?
Yeah, because they're like, how can I help you? And you're like, I don't know.
Right. You're like, if you ever sit down and have a coffee chat with someone that's not clear and you leave it and you're like, oh, okay, that they were nice, but you don't know how to help, how to support, and things kind of fizzle. That is not how you go about, about elevating yourself and elevating others. So I say those 3 C's: create strategic goals, cheer for other success, and call on your support system. And I promise if you work those, you're going to see what I mean by joy is the foundation of goal setting, not just the reward. Because your dreams are going to be empowered. All the teams around you are going to elevate, right? Because we all come up together, and the company you're at is going to experience transformation because everyone in the company is going to be moving that way. So that's also why I started doing the workshops, because I realized this isn't about just the individual. It's about the individual and everyone around them.
Yeah, it's a team sport, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask people where they can find you, and then I think you're going to share something with the audience. For those of you listening, we will put what Bossy's going to share in the show notes. So we'll start to answer the question really quickly. Where can people find you? And then we'll take a look at the great offering you have for our listeners.
Yeah, you're going to kill me. I already pressed the share button. So
that's okay. That's all right. We'll go there first. Go ahead.
We'll go there first. So for anyone who is watching, you can go ahead. Like I said earlier, I truly believe in continuous growth, but also I just want to know, did you all find value in today's podcast, and what was it that was valuable? So I want to hear your thoughts, the good, bad, and the ugly. And for that, I want to make sure you get the Vision and Goals Roadmap. So just like I promised, if you're watching on TV, if you're watching on YouTube, scan the QR code and put it in there. If you're not, Shannon will have the link for you. It's just talk.ac/bossy, and you put in this little code and it will take you to it. So you do that, it'll take you less than 2 minutes, and it will give you access to the Vision and Goals Roadmap.
It's
And so
exciting. Yay.
yes, it'll also, I put a bonus in there for y'all because I have this playlist that I love. It's called the Goal and Grind Pump Up playlist. It's just some fun girly music to keep, your joy going whenever you're working on really hard tasks. And so I'm going to stop sharing now, but to Shannon's second question, how do you get in touch with me? Go to my website first off, www.goalandgrind.com. And if you're like, what does this mean? It's because we're setting big goals, we're grinding them out one step at a time. So just go to goalandgrind.com and you can find everything. If you're interested in following along with things that we mentioned, like Finish Line Friday, and continuing to impede your joy with us, find me on LinkedIn, find me on Instagram, and those are the places. But I just, more than anything, want to say thank you to Shannon. I want to say thank you to all of you for listening. I really hope that this episode helps you grow and glow in a way that brings you joy. And I can't wait to hear about it. So definitely please connect with me online. And Shannon, you're the best. You're just over there glowing, and it brings me joy. So thank you for having me.
Well, I am joyful now for the rest of my whole afternoon because we're filming this around a lunch hour. So it's going to be great. I'm in a great mood. Thank you so much, Bossy, for bringing the joy. And I will see you all soon, everybody. Bye, everybody.
Bye.